Hi, this is Barry here, and you're very, very welcome to today's podcast episode from WriteCome.com. And today I want to take you down memory lane, and it's a memory that's always stuck in my mind, and it's something that I learned from throwing darts at the ceiling. So if we take it way back, probably about 30 years ago, to a bored Irish teenager lying on his bed, nothing to do. This was long before the internet and all that thing, so there wasn't much back then to do. But I don't know whether I was listening to music or whatever, but from where my bed was positioned in the room, when I was lying down on my pillow and looking straight up, there was like a hatch door above my head, and this was the hatch door that led into the attic space. So this wooden door was above my head anyway. So whatever happened, I got this crazy idea in my head, and I thought to myself, I wonder if I tossed a dart up there. I wonder could I get it to stick in that door. So I leapt off the bed anyway, went away and grabbed the darts from the dartboard and lay back on the bed, and over the next 5 minutes or so I was tossing darts straight up at the wooden door to see if I could get them to stick in it. Now straight away, this was like something out of Jackass. So the TV show would do those crazy stunts, because basically what I was doing was I was tossing a dart vertically straight up from my head, trying to get it in the door, and then if the dart didn't hit the door, or didn't stick to it, it fell straight back down. And it was actually coming straight back down from my face. So at this stage then, it was a matter of moving my head either to the left or to the right and avoiding the point of the dart as it came back down. So again, you would think after the first one or two tosses, I would say to myself, this is a dangerous game. Maybe it's time I shouldn't do it anymore. But whatever reason, I kept going. I kept tossing the dart up and up and up. And of course, there was a couple of times the darts came close, and maybe one time, I think I pierced myself in the ear with it because it was so close to my head. But there was this one time I did toss it up. I think this was the final time I tossed it up. Now you're probably thinking, he stuck it in his face or something like that. Something bad happened, but it wasn't actually like that at all. What actually happened was when I tossed the dart up, when it fell back down, it bounced off the edge of the bed and fell down between my bed and the wall. Now the room that I was in was actually a small room, so I couldn't actually pull the bed out from the wall to have a look and see what was going on, or where the dart had gone to. So I placed my hand down between the bed and the wall, and I was just gingerly kind of touching the carpet because I didn't want to stab myself in the hand with the point of the dart. But when I put my hand down on the carpet underneath the bed, it felt damp, and which for me, I was thinking straight away the alarm bells were going off, and thinking, why is that carpet wet down there? I don't remember spilling any juice or anything. I had nothing in my hand that that was wet. How is that wet? So I kept putting my hand down, and it was actually, I could feel it getting wetter and wetter. And the thing was, it was actually warm. There was a warm liquid or something was coming. So straight away I put two and two together and realized I just punctured a hole in the heating system in the house. So of course it was straight panic station. So I did my best to pull the bed back, and sure enough, I watched this kind of brown hot liquid oozing out of, well, it wasn't actually oozing, it was actually spraying. I think at the time it was spraying out onto the carpet. And the longer this was going on, this kind of brown patch of rusty water coming out of the heating system was just going straight onto my carpet. So of course, being a teenager, the last thing you want to do is to tell your parents just what you've done, and especially because my father had done the plumbing in the house. He was trying to keep the cost of the extension on the house at the time as low as possible. So he was doing all the plumbing work himself. And I'd actually been helping him measure up all the copper piping and, help on him, do the fittings and whatever needed to be done. And the fact that I would have to race down to him and say, Dad, I'm after puncturing the copper pipe. I knew I was in for throttle, and I knew I was going to get a lecture. I knew I was going to get, what the hell were you thinking throwing darts around the room like that, you idiot? And so I knew I couldn't do it, so I'm going to have to work out this problem on my own. So I kept thinking to myself, I can't tell them, I have to get this hole closed some way. And I kept thinking to myself, what goes in the hole, what goes in the hole, what goes in the hole. And I was thinking to myself, the first thing that came to mind was actually a nail. I was thinking I can maybe put a nail in it. And then I said to myself, no, the water pressure will probably be too much, and it'll probably push the nail back out. And I don't want to start hammering a nail into a copper pipe, because knowing my luck the way it was going, I would probably drive it through the other side and I'd end up with two holes in the pipe. So I said, no, I can't do that. So I kept thinking to myself over and asking myself the same question over and over again. What can I put in a hole? What can I put in a hole? And straight away I said to myself, a screw. I can put a screw in a hole. So straight away I raced off to the garage. I went rummaging through all the different, my father had all these kind of jam jars full of all these screws and bolts and all that, and I tossed them out and had a look around, and I found a tiny wee wood screw. So I raced back into the house, grabbed a screwdriver, tried to not let anybody know what I was doing, so it was complete secrecy. Raced into the room, locked the door, and put this small brass screw in and twisted it in. And thank God I watched the flow of water slow down, and then it eventually stopped. So I had averted disaster with this kind of tiny brass screw. So of course I knew that eventually the truth was going to come out. My mother was going to probably pull the bed away from the wall to make up the bed or something, and she was going to notice this brass screw, or maybe she was going to knock it out by accident, and it was going to be all, it was going to be flooding time again. So I knew I had to make it good. So again, I raced back into the garage. I got a small kind of metal hacksaw, and I cut the top of the screw so it was flush with the pipe. So I knew then I needed to cover up the damage that I'd done and the scratching that I had done with the hacksaw. So I raced back out, and I got some white paint, and I put a little blob on the place where the screw was. So then if anybody did find the mark on the pipe, they would just find a blob of white paint, which they would probably presume had dripped from the ceiling when the ceiling was being painted, and nobody would pay any attention to it. So thankfully that copper pipe has been kept that way for the last 30 years. Nobody has ever found out about that brass screw in the thing, and it has held, it has kept the McDonald household, the heating system in it, going all that time without being found out. Now, you may be wondering, why is he telling me this story about, throwing darts and holes in copper pipes? What's that got to do with anything? But like, we've all been in these situations where maybe we've had a problem and, we had no way out of it. And, when our back was to the wall, the panic stations went in. You ask yourself, how can I solve this problem? How can I solve this problem? And, if you ask yourself that question long enough, you're going to surprise yourself, and you're going to divert the disaster that you had. You're going to come up with some ingenious thing that, if you had been maybe, not under pressure, you wouldn't have stuck with the problem for so long, and you would have put up with it, but because you were under pressure and you needed a solution to that problem, you come up with an answer. It's what I found from that thing was that, when you ask yourself a better question, you get yourself a better answer. And I found that many times with my fiction writing. If you ask yourself today, why does your writing suck? Your brain is going to give you plenty of answers of why your writing sucks. If you can ask yourself, how can I get better? You'll get better answers. So, as Tony Robbins often says, if you ask yourself a better question, you'll get yourself a better answer. If you're asking your questions like, why does my writing suck? Why did I get that bad book review? Why can't I sell my books? Why is nobody coming to my blog posts? Your brain's going to give you loads of things, and they're going to be things that aren't going to help you. They're going to be things that are kind of hold you down, and they're going to highlight all the weaknesses in you, and all the things that you're lacking. Whereas maybe you just turn that question on its head and you say, how can I get more people to my blog posts? How can I be a better writer? How can I get better book reviews? How can I speed up my fiction writing? When you ask yourself those kind of questions, it's a better question, so you're going to get a better answer to it. And it's going to be something that's going to be constructive. It's going to be something that you can work on, and something that's going to move you forward, rather than asking those poor questions that are going to keep you where you are and aren't going to help you, and, aren't going to make a difference to whatever you're doing. And yet we've all been in those situations. You know yourself that, when your back was to the wall and you had to work out something, that by asking yourself better questions, you got a better answer, and you probably solved that problem because of it. So today, whatever your problem is, ask yourself a better question. What is a better way to come out of it? And if you can't maybe think of, how you could do it, ask yourself the question was, if I was a better fiction writer, what would I be doing right now? If I owned a blog that was, visited by thousands of people every day, what content would I be putting on it? And by asking yourself questions along that. And the thing is, the fact is, the brain that's giving you the bad answers is the same brain that's giving you the good answers. Like, the good and the bad answers are all in that head of yours. And it's just a matter of kind of, picking out the ones that are more constructive and the ones that are going to help you, rather than focusing on the bad ones. So again, you may think other people are, better than you, but I'm telling you now, the good and the bad answers are all in that head of yours. And the only way you're going to get to those good answers is by asking yourself a better question. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode today. It was fun for me going back over, reliving that moment. And I know if my son came down to me and told me he had punctured the heating pipes by throwing darts around, I know I would be livid. As a parent now, I don't know how. I think I was wise to keep my mouth shut that time and not say anything to my father. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. I hope you learned something from it, and basically just, ask yourself a better question today. If you ask yourself a better question, you're going to find a better answer, and you're going to get a better solution to wherever you are at the moment. Now, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I would really appreciate it if you would share it with one more person, or send a tweet or a like out on Facebook or Twitter and tell people what you're listening to at the moment. And even better, if you could maybe go over to iTunes and give us a quick review, it'll be really, really appreciated, because the more reviews, that go on the system over there, the more it will open this podcast up to more people, and the more people I can get to listen in. So as always, thanks for sharing your time with me together today, and take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.